Lumpaoครับ I wanted to ask you how important it is to how important it is to have a good teacher, and what the relationship should be like between the teacher and the student, aside from obviously what is laid out in the Vinaya, and also what's the criteria that one should look for in a potential teacher, or in a teacher that you have already?
Well, I would. The real teacher is the Buddha, so you've got the, it's very well, kind of clear teaching in itself. So, you more or less have to do the best you can with that until something happens where you find a teacher, that you feel faith with, to live with, and that you can learn from, because you can't just, not an act of will, just there's something happens where you have faith or confidence in someone and not in someone else. So with me, as meeting Ajahn Chah, I found him, I wasn't even looking for a teacher, I was just looking for a place to stay. And then I met him, and then I felt confidence in him. But the thing that I always felt that confidence arose because he was never pointing at himself. He was always pointing at Dhamma, so he was, he's not trying to, I was afraid when I went to stay with Ajahn Chah, because I already had a year of practice, and I felt confident in the kind of insights I did have, and I was afraid that when I went to, Ajahn Chah would be another one of those teachers that say you have to do it like this, and walk slowly, and on and on, give me another method of meditation, which I didn't want. And so when I met Ajahn Chah, and he asked me, what my practice was, and how, what I'd, any insights I'd had during that time, he never, he just said, keep doing that. He encouraged me to, in what I was actually confident in, rather than kept telling me I should do it his way. And so that increased my confidence. And I never felt he's ever pointing to himself, he's never, he was a very charming person. He had a charisma, very strong sense of personal charisma, and a very appealing personality. But it never was, you never felt it was kind of, he wasn't using it to make you dependent on him, or to bind you to him. It was always, once I asked him about it, I said, "You're very charming, Ajahn Chah. Why do you use so much charm with teaching?" He says, "It's my magnet." He says, "I use it. I draw people in with charm, and then after a while they might listen actually to Dhamma." So it was, and I did see that, because he was, never. You ask him, "What's your attainment?" or he just laughed. He wouldn't answer questions of that order, and every time you wanted to start kind of clinging to him, and that he'd get you to look at what you're doing rather than encouraging it. Like, "I'm your only teacher, and don't go to any other teacher." I never heard him say that. "Don't you look at anyone else. You have to devote your life to me," and I never heard anything like that. So it was always, so my confidence and trust in him increased over the years, because I found that so helpful to not feel I'm being exploited by anybody, or being kind of pulled in and bound into some kind of guru relationship, but more, this man, this particular monk, actually trying to get me to wake up to life. So I wouldn't trust teachers who constantly point at themselves or give you a lot of, I'm your teacher, you can't look at anyone else. That kind of thing. Because even one time, one monk got so inspired by Ajahn Chah, he said, I want to take a lifetime vow to be a monk for the rest of my life. And Ajahn Chah's reply was, the future's the unknown. Now I was inspired, lifetime vow, that's a quite inspiring thing, but Ajahn Chah was kind of seeing this monk particularly was in a stage of, I wanted to devote my life to the Dhamma and give my life to it. It's all quite beautiful and inspiring, but he wasn't supporting it in the sense that it's, making this monk make that vow. He's pointing to the reality the future is unknown. Right now you don't know what's going to happen in the future. And so that's a real direct pointing at the way it is, rather than binding you to a statement of inspiration. Because those, your mood changes all the time. You feel, I want to be a monk the rest of my life, and the next day you want to disrobe. So you can't trust that kind of feeling, but you can be aware of it.
I find it really an interesting question, because we're kind of a community since the time that Luang Por Chah isn't around anymore, that doesn't have that figure or that charismatic magnet that pulls the faith from the start. So we tend to do our kind of try to get along without, and over 20, 30 years it kind of worked. We're still here and without any charismatic person, and just kind of find it interesting. But yet there is the longing to have a teacher, and certainly the abbot can't presently be that one. And so how do we practice with that? And maybe there's the wish we find the Arahant teacher, say somewhere in Chonburi or somewhere in Chiang Mai or so, but yet we're living in this community which, kind of doesn't have that charismatic magnet that we sometimes need.
Well, what do you need? What are the necessities? What is absolutely necessary for enlightenment is Dhamma and then Vinaya. So here you've got teaching the Dhamma, and the Vinaya is respected. And then you've got 4 requisites. You get shelter for the night, robes, food, and medicine. So this is how, getting people to reflect on that this is all you need, So then you begin to see your discontent, thinking, I'd rather go stay with that Arahant up in Chiang Mai. And so you're encouraging people to look at this rather than thinking, supporting the idea that there's something wrong, there's not something better than somewhere else, because that's another perception. And because people, we suffer from discontentment, and you stay any monastery, you get tired of it after a while. Not any place looks better than the one you're in, but it's more important to see that rather than to follow it. And what is important is for me, the Dhamma is 4 Noble Truths, the sutta style Dhamma, and the Paticca Samuppada, and things like this. This Satipatthana, and they've got, this is very much encouraged as, on a Pariyatti level, and then to practice with it. So it's complete. You can't. The Four Noble Truths is actually perfect teaching. It's not. There's nothing lacking in it. But in terms of if everything else were lost, somebody destroyed the whole scripture, all the scriptures, leaving only the Dhammacakka Pavattana Sutta, that'd be enough. I found that's absolutely, that says it all. But then it's not, and just on a Pariyatti level, it isn't very much. So, but Bhatti is then the practice. It's a lifetime of practice, of investigating, until you become so clear that, insight, knowledge becomes so strong that you get beyond the doubting of it. Because, like, I found living with Ajahn Chah something that I, because I did trust him and admire him, I could easily learn from him in a positive way, and I could also serve him, and to massage his feet or to do things for him and bow to him was always kind of a pleasure and an honor. And then I went up to another branch monastery where the head monk I didn't respect at all, and neither did the Thai monks there. So they'd get together and talk about how awful this monk is, and so then I started contemplating. He is not like Ajahn Chah. He's kind of crude and does stupid things and all this. So then I could justify even feeling I don't even want to bow to him because I feel it's just not good enough. But then observing this I learned from him a lot, about my own conceit, and just not thinking that learning from somebody I didn't respect. But the Dhamma Vinaya was there. The four requisites were adequate. So in terms of what was necessary was complete. And then it's just a personal reaction to the head monk, who I didn't have faith in. But actually, because I did learn from him about, I saw my conceitedness clearly, that Ajahn Chah's worthy of my respect, but you're not, is really quite pathetic. So then, like this, where Vinaya helps to kind of oil the wheels, the mechanism. So you're not just coming from personal, feelings about anybody, but you're doing, you're doing what's right according to the Vinaya, so that, it doesn't matter about your personal feeling towards the senior monk. That's not the issue anymore. But everybody would like a perfect teacher, but Ajahn Chah would, he'd send us away, to live with others, and that was, who you didn't have maybe respect in the same way, or you didn't like even, but you could still learn because of the encouragement to be aware, rather than I have to live with somebody I can really trust and respect, is still Sakkaya Ditthi. Also, you learn from the way it is. So, you can think, I've got to live at Wat Pah Pong, I'll live with Ajahn Liam because that's the only place I feel safe. It's still, still creating a suffering. So it's this is where, like learning to trust your awareness more rather than, than getting dependent on a particular monastery or style that you become addicted to. You depend on it and feel insecure when those conditions aren't present. So that's where this awareness practice helps you to see where you can adapt and flow with life and not just be, get fixed on it has to be like this, otherwise I can't practice. And when it happens, it's certainly wonderful. I mean, like, I was with Ajahn Chah during his kind of peak years, and I feel very fortunate, to have that. And, I miss him, I kind of think of him, but yet, when I went to live in England, it was like suddenly I remember seeing Ajahn Chah at the airport. He went back to Thailand and left me in London, and I felt like an orphan, suddenly deserted, left there in a foreign country. But I could observe that, I didn't make it, grasp it or believe in it, but you still feel these you still feel life, and even when the head monk is very divisive or temperamental or untrustworthy, you can still learn. If you trust your awareness. So it's sometimes monasteries do have a lot of harmony and samakhi, the sense of social harmony and supporting each other. But if you depend on that, then when it's impermanent like everything else, and Ajahn Liam is impermanent. I remember we all thought when Luang Por Chah became ill that, oh my God, what are we going to do? But there's enough, the power of the Dhamma is so, here and now. It's not dependent on one monk support, keeping it alive. Because when Luang Por Chah became ill, then many of us had to rise up, in a way we didn't have the great charismatic teacher that we felt, we compared ourselves with and always felt, he's the great teacher and I'm just the one who's his follower. And so, remember, Ajahn Chah had this stroke at Tam Sangpet while I was in England, and so they told me right away, but it was during the Pansa, so I had to wait till after the Pansa. As soon as the Pansa, I went to Bangkok, and he was in the Chulalongkorn Hospital, and then Ajahn Prabhakar wheeled him out in a wheelchair, and he was just sitting there like a sack of potatoes, just like this. And I was with Mayor Bao, who was one of his devoted supporters, a Thai woman, and she broke down crying in front of him, and I started crying too. I felt this incredible grief. See, Ajahn Chah was so strong, a personality, charismatic, kind of magnificent man, and he's just like sack of potatoes like this, and it's so depressing to look at, and you felt this grief. And then I just felt at the time, I said, this woman is, wailing in front of him. What he must feel like, if I go and wail in front of him, And what did he teach me? To be aware, So it became clear that the best way because I felt this great love for him. I wanted to, there's a sense of wanting to repay him was to practice what he was actually teaching. And he wasn't teaching, I'm the great teacher, and when I die, everything will fall apart. And if I change, and become a sack of potatoes, that's the end of Buddhism. It's much more, Dhamma that's managed to survive 2,551 years. It's got its own power. And sometimes you get charismatic teachers like Ajahn Chah come along, but you can't depend on that. And that's not going to be. Don't wait for that to happen. In other words, don't wait for some charismatic teacher to carry you, but learning to awake and trust yourself. Not trust your views and opinions, but that awareness. Trust it, because it is something. That is the only thing you can really trust. Because like Ajahn Chah dead, Buddhadasa's dead, and Luang Por Liam is not going to last all that much longer. And these kind of charismatic great teachers, they die just like every other creature. But the Dhamma, sustains itself. And it's always amazed me how appropriate it is to modern Europe. It's so, it's not an old-fashioned Asian teaching. It's not like something from the past. It's about life itself, being human, and the problems that all humanity's had ever since the first one. And suffering, the causes, and the ability that this human state has to reflect on suffering. So that we're not just helplessly caught in a realm of suffering without any way to understand it, but we can actually use suffering to free ourselves from it. And that's what the word Buddha really means. It's awakened consciousness. It's not a person. It's not Gautama the Buddha anymore. It's you. It's me. It's awakened consciousness that is here and now. That we, and we can use this, recognize it, and appreciate it. Then our conditioning, our human limitations are then seen and not taken personally anymore, or clung to, or identified with.
Can I ask, how can one create the power of the Sangha, carrying a momentum? What kind of practices can help to the feeling having a powerful feeling of living together in a community?
Well, it's like this is a very important question actually, because generally speaking, Westerners we're so individualistic. And I never really had a sense of a community before. From my background, it was just asserting yourself and being independent and not depending on others. The sense of, I can take care of myself was very much my cultural conditioning. And so I never developed a sense, even with my own family, my mother and father. I never developed a kind of bond like with Asian people, they often have a very strong sense of bonding with their families. I didn't have that. The whole emphasis was on human rights, my rights, and what I think, and my individuality, and my independence. So those kind of perceptions, they weren't all that conscious, but they were influencing how I picked up monastic life here. And then in the Thai monastic system, you see, then you are incredibly dependent on others. So like Ajahn Chah, wouldn't allow, for years he would not allow electricity inside the monastery or pumps on the wells. And so you had to work every afternoon drawing water in these kerosene tins, and you had to pull, a group of monks would pull it out, and then you'd have to carry it on bamboo pole. Two monks would carry a couple of these buckets of water. It seemed so primitive, to me. So and then lay people wanted to buy pumps for the wells. I thought that's a great idea. And so I asked Ajahn Chah why he refused, and he said because he wanted us to develop that sense of working together. And actually, I never really thought of it before. It hadn't really registered, and this sense of togetherness, working together, and I found it difficult because I'm culturally not attuned to that. I'm very more like a hermit at heart, or I like being alone, and rather than, I'm not socially kind of intelligent. I don't love society, in other words. So I had to learn how to, work through that, my own reclusive, based on fear of others also. And Ajahn Chah insisted that every opportunity I took to try to get away from it, he pulled me back into it. So I began to just stop trying to get away and just observe. And but this is, I think, Ajahn Chah's genius. When you look at, in Theravada Buddhism in the West, there's so many kind of independent monks, Theravada monks teaching Vipassana and whatnot, but not very many live as a Sangha, can work as a Sangha. And this, I see, was Luang Por Chah's genius, was he did help us to appreciate the sense of Sangha, and like Vinaya, and this sense of community, because it is a refuge. You're not taking refuge in my rights and what I think, but in this supatipano, ujupatipano, sense of practicing, those who practice and that have this common ground of commitment to Dhamma, which is non-personal. It's not like who practices the best here and who's a really good, I'm a better meditator than you. And that gets back into Sakya Ditti. But it remains much more, you're letting go of that whole role of competition or judging yourself and comparing yourself with others or forming views about other monks. And then listening to each other. Like I found that I had to learn how to listen to others. And I was quite good at giving advice and telling people what to do. But actually listening to them was something I'd never really cultivated in lay life. So, and then to live together, like in a community, it's, if you're just telling each other what to do or just, kind of judging each other, criticizing each other, then you don't want to live there. You don't want to live with that endless kind of gossip and judgments, and then you form factions, and then there's always some monk that is a scapegoat, and people get hurt, and you feel resentful and on like that. But so learning to listen and not just listen with a sense of reacting and trying to set them straight if you don't agree, but just learning to listen and listening to others when they say things that you don't like. and without feeling you have to say anything, because you can be aware of your own maybe disagreement. And this is much more, then it's possible to live with each other. Because, how can you, we all have our own vipaka karma to work through. Some of the worst mistakes I've made in, living in communities where I've had attitude, I wanted somebody, I didn't like the way they were, so I wanted to change them. So, I get this view, this monk shouldn't be like this, and he's got strange ways, and he should change, and then I would, I wouldn't say that, but you pick it up, you naturally kind of sense this, that I don't approve of you or don't think you should be who you are, and then the monk reacts very badly. You get a lot of negativity from them, and then you can judge them and say, well, see, that monk is really difficult, and but then I began to look at my own, I began to see my own sense of, I don't like the way you are, I want you to be what I think you should be. By listening to myself, how I would see somebody else, I think that's sakiditi, isn't it? I want you to be, I think you should be what I want you to be what I think you should be, and that's ridiculous, It's a ridiculous demand, totally impossible demand made on somebody else. Learn how to, if they're going to live together as a Sangha, how to do that, and you can't do it if you're just, using your power or you're kind of bullying them or creating, forcing everybody to do it your way. That doesn't work. You just get endless resentments, and nobody wants to live with you. They'll go away. Monasteries go through phases just like you do individually or anyone. Kind of has phases where everything seems inspired, and then reaches a peak, and then it becomes disillusioned, or you get bored or fed up with it, and then it starts again. So that's where to observe the arising ceasing of conditioned alone. Do that so many times. The initial enthusiasm reaches a peak, and then it all stops. People getting negative, but that's where also I've learned the most, where I've been most criticized and put to the test, of where everything I've seemed to have created is now falling apart. And it's interesting to see, because my confidence in awareness is so strong that I know, can see the whole process as a part of, awareness practice, rather than just trying to, feel successful, or, trying to always feel that you have to hold the monastery and lift it up and hold it together, and that's very burdensome. Like in England, trying to hold it together, and the feeling of, without me the whole thing's going to collapse. And I saw I couldn't, that was just on a sakyaditi level, it was just unbearable to feel I have to spend the rest of my life trying to hold this thing together, and it's kind of overestimating myself, thinking without me the thing's going to fall apart. But then I found out it doesn't. It was a kind of relief,